What is up, Brawlers? Welcome back to Tabletop Never Stop and our ongoing series, Know Your Champions. Today we'll be talking about Kilgore, the Ravager. A quick reminder, Super Fantasy Brawl is totally in pre-production, so anything you see here can and probably will change at least a little bit before the final product. And with that in mind, let's take a look at Kilgore. So, Kilgore is a 1 defense, 7 health champion. When he levels up, he gains an additional health, and he becomes immune to stun, which, isn't probably going to be a huge deal until it is. Especially when you get into the later champions that we haven't looked at yet. You could potentially build a list with 3 champions that all have stun, which could be pretty devastating to come up against if an enemy stuns you multiple times in a round. In that specific scenario, being immune to stun is going to be awesome. If you're only facing like one card in your opponent's deck that has stun, being immune to stun is not as big of a deal, but still, it's a nice feature. And getting an extra health when you are a 1 defense champion is also quite nice. All right, so here's our first card. It's a red core, Relentless Advance, movement 1, range 2, straight line. And then the opponent suffers force 1, and then you place Kilgore in the target's original hex. All right, here we go. Movement of 1, range 2 attack on Gwen. She's then forced onto this trap. And Kilgore is now on her original hex. So it's pretty good board control. We forced Gwen out of the blue zone. Interestingly enough, you could actually use it the exact same way. Range 2, she's moved out of the blue hex, and Kilgore is now on her original hex. Here is Kilgore's reaction. It's a red core, dark steel armor, +1 defense, and then after the attack, the target gains +2 defense until the end of the turn. So this is an interesting reaction. Obviously, +1 defense on this first attack isn't that much, but if it's a scenario where the enemy's going to want to try to eliminate your champion, they're going to have a harder time. +2 for the rest of the round is going to make quite a bit of difference. It really lends itself to an aggressive strategy where you leave a champion kind of exposed in the enemy's territory because they're going to want to try to wail on them. But with Dark Steel Armor, they might have a really hard time. I would say don't get overly confident with this reaction. There are still plenty of ways to sneak damage through armor, pushes and pulls being the most obvious, but there's other cards out there too. Throw, yellow core, movement 2, an adjacent ally may jump 3. So you can get quite an amount of board control out of this card. Movement of 2, and then adjacent ally can be jump 3. 1, 2, 3. Also, you go 1, 2, 3 right over the statue. Malthrash, another yellow core, movement of 1, strength of 2 attack, and then after the attack, push 2. It's another great board control. So you'll notice that Kilgore's not very fast, but he is good at kind of controlling an area. So if you can kind of get him in the middle, you can be able to keep other champions out of his area, and if they go in there, you can punish them with some damage. But he's not the fastest guy. Here's Fury, a blue core attack. It is a movement of 2, area of effect all the way around him, and just remember that area of effect can hit your own champion, so you got to watch out for that. And so it's a 2 strength attack, and after the attack, heal 1. So if the enemy groups himself around you, you can pretty significantly punish them with Kilgore, especially if this attack was buffed with something like Miharti's from Goldar or Su Zhao's Focus. And those actually would also really help give an extra movement to Kilgore, maybe help him get into the right spot to pull this attack off. And then finally we have Appetite for Destruction, which is a really interesting card and mechanic. So it's blue core, 1 strength attack with lifesteal, but the card gains +2 for each ready core you control. And so what that means is you can potentially have either 2 ready cores, 1 ready core, or 0 ready cores when you use this card. You can never have 3 ready cores because you have to spend your blue core to even use the card. So best case scenario, you get to use a 5 strength attack with lifesteal. That's pretty dangerous. Now, since there's no movement on this attack, you can only do it if someone leaves a champion adjacent to Kilgore. So counterplay-wise, you're going to want to keep an eye out for this card. If it's in the discard pile, then okay, go next to Kilgore. If it's not, you might want to stay well away from him. It's just a really interesting mechanic because it gets better the earlier you use it in a turn. So if you use it in the opening as your opening action, it's amazing. Use it as your second action, it's decent, right? Nothing wrong with a three power attack that heals you. And if you use it as your third action, it's basically garbage. So it's an interesting mechanic. I'd like to see it maybe appear on other characters. And that's Kilgore. He's an interesting guy. I would say he's not necessarily like a high skill character, but he is a little bit difficult to use because he's very slow. He doesn't have a card that moves faster than 2, and his best attack doesn't have any movement at all. Relentless Advance gives you some mobility options because you can effectively move 3 with it. It's partially in a straight line, so there's some limitations there. But even though he's slow, he's pretty good area control guy. He's got access to push, he's got access to force, and he can move his own guys around pretty effectively with throw. So Kilgore definitely wants to kind of hang out in the middle of the board and just wail on anyone who's dumb enough to get close to him. Counterplay, honestly, avoid him if you can. 7 health with an armor isn't unbeatable, but it's unlikely you're gonna be able to take him out in a turn. And because he has access to healing with 2 different cards, there's a decent chance that any punishment you do put on him is going to turn out to, is going to end up getting negated. And that's not something that you want. You don't want to be putting damage into a character that's going to heal himself so effectively. So you're maybe better off using your fast characters to stay away from him. If the game becomes about controlling objectives on different sides of the board, Kilgore is going to struggle because he's just not that fast. A mobile team could definitely run circles around him. But of course, that's where your other champions come into play. So if you're fielding him, you probably want either some fast characters that can help him out, or characters that can boost all the allies' movement. Because once you've played one of those cards that can really boost movement, then Kilgore is not going to be seen that slow anymore. And that concludes today's episode of Know Your Champions. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you follow me on Instagram, you can vote on which champion gets featured next. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.